New World was one of the greatest games ever made, through its robust combat, to its industry-defining sound design, to its satisfying gathering and crafting system. But perhaps the biggest thing which separated it from other traditional MMOs was its combat. New World strayed from the norm of tap targeting and instead opted for a more action-based system. In this video, we'll take a look at what made New World great, why it has ultimately failed its core player base, and what's next for the game. New World released late September 2021, and if you were around when the game launched, you probably already know the countless problems this game faced. Disregarding the long queue times that come with any game of this scale, there were plenty of surface level issues apparent immediately within the first few hours of gameplay. From not being able to fast travel due to the very high Azoth cost, to the terribly designed storage system which didn't allow players to transfer items between each storage shed, it was very clear this game was showing some of its faults. And of course, there were countless other bugs that can't be fit into one video. As far as big MMO game launches go, this was pretty standard, but perhaps the biggest problem for New World back in late 2021 was the severe lack of endgame content.
All right, let's start off really, let's talk about the end-game progression loops. Now, end-game progression loops in New World are the worst in any real game that I've ever played before.
For the players who did reach the endgame, this is where New World's true colors started to really show, and it's likely why there was such a sharp decline in the player base during the months following launch. I could spend hours talking about the launch of New World alone, but let's switch the focus to New World in its current state.
This is what happens when you have people who don't play games make games. That's New World.
With Amazon's decision to pursue a console release, a lot of the core player base who were playing the game since launch felt betrayed. The hype surrounding the June event showcase was very high, and there was a lot riding on it. Unfortunately, the general sentiment regarding this trailer was too little too late. Currently, New World's player base is at its lowest point in history, and yet, having played the game for over 5,000 hours, I keep wanting to come back. The biggest reason I find myself coming back to New World is its combat. It's hard to describe what makes the combat so great in this game, but this is perhaps the greatest strength New World has over other games. Typically when you think of games with great combat systems, you might think of Sekiro for its amazing parry system, or Sifu for its fast-paced nature and well-defined combo system, or Remnant 2 for its unique take on the Souls-like genre and great boss design. Among others, these are what I would consider the greats when it comes to combat design. So where does New World land? New World is a game with solid bones. The foundation on which the combat was built can best be classified in 4 ways: simple to learn, hard to master, animation cancelling, crowd control mechanics, and finally, group content.
I think what this game does a good job of is it's so different from your traditional MMO that I'd imagine that people who don't like MMOs would actually like this game.
In New World, there are no restrictions. There are no classes, and nothing is really off limits in terms of weapon combinations. So, if you've been playing as a mage for the first 30 levels and find a really cool warhammer, you can use that weapon. Additionally, if you want to go around heavy attacking everything with a greatsword, you can do that too. If you want to fight from afar with a bow or a musket, you can do that too. And if you want to go up close and personal with a rapier, learn every attack, you can do that too. The important thing is that each of these playstyles feel rewarding in their own way. New World's ability system is very digestible as a new player. With only 3 slottable abilities and a measly 20 points to put into other weapon perks, the build variety might seem very surface level compared to a game like Diablo or Path of Exile. Surprisingly, however, there is a substantial amount of depth achievable with just this. This is one of the main reasons New World is so beginner-friendly. With only 6 abilities to choose from per weapon, it allows the player to experiment freely without feeling overwhelmed. In other games like Elden Ring, when you go for an attack, you're locked into that, and if you decide you actually want to roll away or block, you can't. In New World, your options aren't as limited, and you can dodge or use an ability during most attacks. It's important to remember, however, this is a key design choice and is not indicative of good versus bad. This is also why Souls games are much more punishing, since each action matters. New World's well-defined animation canceling system is one of the main reasons I personally enjoy the combat so much. It allows for a lot more horizontal skill progression the more you understand about it. Of the over 5,000 hours spent playing New World, a significant amount of that time was spent using the rapier. There's no other game which has given me the raw satisfaction of pushing a single game's mechanics to its limits. I still remember the day when I first tried using the weapon months after the game had already been released. Up to that point, I was mainly just a beginner tank. However, the more I used the weapon, the more I liked it. And to be honest, the main reason I was so interested in learning the rapier was because of an old company member who made it look so easy. Of course, it took me months before I even felt like I had mastered the weapon. But when I reached that point, I realized I only barely scratched the surface of the game's full potential. From that point on, it became an obsession, a twisted repetition of the same old dungeons. Every day I spent hours trying to get better. One of these dungeons was Tempest Heart, where I have regretfully spent at least 500 hours alone. And if you don't believe me, well, just remember, for me, using this weapon was an obsession. Every riposte, every evade, every solo boss kill was a dopamine hit that just kept me coming back. In some aspects, this game has been more of a personal journey for myself, mastering a pointless game mechanic and pushing it to its limits. This is also where I'd like to mention the boss design in New World. Generally, the enemy design across the dungeons are well thought out and in my opinion don't get enough credit. One of my favorite bosses is the final boss of Tempest Heart. Her attacks are set up, choreographed in a way that makes soloing her feel like a dance, and only when you fully master a weapon like this can you truly understand what it took to get to that point. Of course, there are outliers, however.
Like, this is a fight that's hard because it's hard to see what's going on. It's not a fight that's hard because it's mechanically hard. Which is, like, in my opinion, the worst kind of fight. It's only hard because of, like, some other bullshit.
But overall, the design and balance is great. Another great part about New World's combat is its stun and stagger system. Overall, this has gone through multiple iterations to reach the point where it is today. Ultimately, the game now has balance around stagger and damage, especially when it comes to PvP. Abilities with crowd control tend to do less damage, and this allows game modes like 3v3s, OPR, and Wars to naturally create team-play mechanics, where each player specializes in a certain role, whether that's be a tank, an assassin, DPS, crowd control mage, or a bruiser. Part of the reason group content feels so rewarding to play is because of the strong ability design in New World. Whether that's for raw damage, crowd control, applying a debuff, sustaining less damage, or countless ways to heal yourself, or heal others. Not only do these abilities feel great to use, but you look badass using them too. And of course, they sound amazing. I still vividly remember playing New World the week of release, roaming around Everfall and hearing players chopping wood in the forest. Something about playing the game on the opening week was very serene. Oftentimes I would find myself out someplace in the forest, chopping some trees, and see 2 or 3 PvP players run past, only to moments later see a massive group of flag players from the opposing faction charging towards them. And I was just left to wonder, I wonder what those guys did to piss off a squad like them. Moments like this will never be replicated, and that's kind of what makes them all the more special. Nowadays, you don't see anything like that. In fact, it's rare to even see anyone out in the open world at all. The world is pretty barren right now, which is sad because seeing others out and about is what made this game feel alive and immersive.
I think that the way this game looks, the rocks, and just looking out over the vastness of the game, I think this is fucking amazing. And I love just being in this world.
If there's anything this game did absolutely correct, it's the sound design. One of my most memorable experiences in New World was running a dungeon called the Immersion Forge. From the moment you enter, you start to hear the Doom-esque soundtrack kick in, and when the music starts to pick up while slaying enemies, it's something else entirely. There's a stark difference from the traditional soundtrack found in the game, but it somehow fit the vibe perfectly. And for those who play PvP, I can't talk about sound design without mentioning the satisfying ping sound from getting a PvP kill. The best part of having great sound design is it makes gathering enjoyable. When you chop a tree, it falls over. When you mine some ore, it crumbles away. And when you catch a fish, your character admires the catch. These small details give life to an otherwise monotonous task. New World's journey has been a bumpy one, and it seems like we are in the dark ages. Despite its obvious flaws, I think this game has a great foundation and legs to walk on. It just needs the higher level of standards and treatment found in most live service games. Amazon Games has a diamond tier, it just needs a lot of polishing. If this is the end for New World, then I can't say I regret my time I spent with it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe for more content like this in the future.